wanted to just let the group know about a couple of things. First of all, I just wanted to formally welcome Mary Jo to KERT. Mary Jo, of course, is the new ED for Downtown Kingston BIA. So Mary Jo, thank you and welcome. Looking forward to getting your feedback. Input. Thank you. Awesome. The other thing I will let the group know is that Susan St. Clair has had to step down from KERT because of some other work responsibilities, and so she really brought both the lens of the retail and the West End as well, and so I thought that was really great to have input. So I think we will be looking to fill that gap, and so I'm just going to throw it out to you folks. If any of you have any suggestions of someone that you think would be good to join us around the table, please feel free to send me an email or a text, and I'll work on that. Okay, so we have a couple of things on our agenda, and really hoping to have some good group discussion and feedback on this. So the first thing that I was hoping to get feedback from everybody on is the reopening. So I think it's overdue. Certainly here in Kingston, I think we've been ready to go for a while. So it's good that we're finally moving in to at least phase 1 tomorrow. What would be useful for me is just to hear from folks around the table about what we should be watching for. What is it that we need to keep an eye on? What can we help with? That could either be continued advocacy with the province, which of course we've continued to do. For example, if there's opportunities to speed up reopening depending on local conditions, if a regional approach again becomes perhaps necessary, those sorts of pieces would be like on the provincial advocacy front. And the other piece, I know Susan Stewart is here with us as well. If there's anything locally, either as a city or public health, things that we need to watch for that can assist businesses and sectors as we start to move into that reopening. So I'm hoping that maybe we could just kind of open up the floor, and maybe I might just kind of go around the table and just get any thoughts or feedback about how we can assist. So maybe I'm just going to go by faces I see on my screen. So Tricia, maybe I can start with you from the cultural sector. What is it that we need to keep an eye on as we move into reopening?
If we're looking at live performance and the ability to go into museums, right now streaming is allowed, but in last fall we were allowed to have limited audiences, and given our low contagion rate, it seems like Kingston is at a different stage than Toronto and Peel at this time. And to move ahead, again, the whole economic model for performing arts has to do with the crowd model and ticket sales covering off artistic costs. And this will create artistic employment, which is much needed. We were, the arts are one of the hardest hit sectors during COVID. Oh, you're on, sorry, Mayor, you're on.
Thanks, Tricia. So on that piece, does that look like advocating for faster move to phase 2 or phase 3? Is that what we're looking at? Okay.
It's moving ahead, because if you look at, well, you already know the stats, we are at a much greater rate, and I look at the Kingston health stats all the time, and the amount of people who have been vaccinated at this point is just way to go, Kingston Health. It's fantastic. So we've got the vaccinations in hand, but also the level of people who are affected by the contagion is way down. So there's two big trends on that front. And arts, performing arts have the protocol to keep people apart. There are health and safety protocol that has been put into place to keep people apart. There's no bars, there's no gathering, there's a whole bunch of things that people have put into place to make sure that it is a healthy situation with a limited audience.
That's great, thank you. That's very helpful. Tim, maybe I'll go to you next. So restaurant sector, starting with outdoor patios, but let us know, what is it we need to keep an eye on and how can we help?
Yeah, it's a bit of a scramble right now. We have that weird, are we going to open early? Aren't we? And everyone changing schedules. And anyway, that was a lot of fun. So I think I would echo a lot of what Tricia is saying as well, is that the regional reopening, switching back to that would be more than welcome. Again, we have very, very controlled environments, and we're able to space people out. The numbers are really low in Kingston, and if you really think about it, across Ontario, and the vaccination rates are really high. I think that now that everyone is on kind of the same page, we don't have to worry so much about region jumping, et cetera, et cetera. So I think advocacy, it really seems like a really drawn out reopening in terms of the 21 days between each phase, and I know for other sectors that's going to be a real challenge, and getting personal services open and things like that is going to take a long time. And then on the other side, other advocacy would be for, again, I think I said this a long time ago, just the government supports ending in September. Again, that was decided before we had a 2-month lockdown. So everyone's either even further in the hole, and, a short blip of summer is certainly not going to pull everyone out and be ready to be sort of let go in September to fend on their own. So that would be a really big piece for, I think, a lot of businesses. That's all I have right now. We're just scrambling to get our places open. Oh, and just Tim, I just want to say too, thanks again to the city for the expanded patios. That's a huge help, especially when indoor dining looks so far off.
No, Tim, I appreciate that feedback. I feel for you in just having to jump around and move early and be ready to go. So congrats on that. Okay, excellent feedback. Pavna, maybe I could go to you next.
So agencies have been working nonstop, so I don't think that'll change. What might change is, hopefully, we're seeing a lot of pressure on agencies about a 30% increase in new clients who suddenly find themselves homeless or strapped or have run through their savings. So maybe this opening is going to relieve some of that pressure. But I hope if you ever have a conversation about budgets, that the province recognizes that the recovery is slow and long for our agencies, and we'd hate to lose any of them in that process because the work they do is essential.
So I think that's a great point, about how the longer the recovery takes, the bigger the issues and the challenges we see in the social sector. And I think that's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of it now, and it's, much as the recovery is on track, we're seeing a lot more pressure for food, housing, and everything else.
Excellent, thank you. Abba, we'll go to you next. How are you doing?
If I just smile, is that enough? No, I don't. So I want to start off with some positives. I'm really thankful, with the city. I think that was really a good initiative through KERT and the city diverting some money so that businesses could apply for that grant. I think that was a really good move by our local councillors and city body, and I really appreciate that. And I think there are a lot of other businesses who are thankful for that opportunity. With respect to personal sector, I think my challenge with it is that I feel like common sense isn't common. And so I just don't really understand, in terms of similar to restaurants, we have gone above and beyond in terms of making sure that we have protective equipment and making sure that we supplied all those things. We did distances, we have barriers, yet it seems like we're the most penalized and the data doesn't support it. There is no direct correlation in personal services to spread or to increase cases, but yet we're not allowed to open till stage 2 when we have all of those things that we've spent money on to make sure that we're safe. So then it seems like, what's the point in these safety things that we had to spend all these money and put these things in places? And if we have procedures and policies that we're following, then why are you not allowing us that ability to do so? And even with the reopening, it changes all the time, but we're not allowed until stage 2. And even then, there's a limitation with respect to what services we can perform. We haven't been open for the most part of this year and a substantial part of last year. And so our losses are significant. And now you're like cutting off our knees and saying you could only do X amount of services when really the value in those services are not a low hanging fruit. They're like waxing, manicure, pedicure. So they're not these services that will generate the income that you need for your business, per se. And then we can't start doing other services until August. By this time, we're into September. So we've lost the prime time of like our season in the summer. We've been closed for most of the year. And then the funding stops in September, which is when we're allowed to do all of our services. And yet we're supposed to be able to kind of recoup from the last 2 years. And so I think it's just a very difficult thing. And added to that, what doesn't make sense is that people are doing this in their homes. People are going to people's houses. So then there's a loss in income. There's a loss in tax revenue. People are doing it. It's not controlled by KFL&A or by a health sector. And so we are pushing people to go to other resources because they want to get their hair done. They want to get their nails done, and they're getting it done by other people. And that is not being regulated. So I think like all those things need to be put into consideration when we're saying that we want to have this approach that is looking after safety and health, when really maybe you might be jeopardizing that because of the avenues in which people have to go to now to get the things that they want to get done, because frankly, they're going to get it done if they want to get it done, you know? And so I think echoing Tim's sentiment about, you know, funding has to continue, because if we're only getting it going in September, like what then? Because now I'm slowing down my season, and this is when I'm being told that I can then start back. And even with the reopening, if there are limitations, because initially it was 5, and I'm not clear as to whether that was 5 clients or a total of 5. But a total of 5, if that's the case in our spas, then it's almost better to be closed, you know, because it's very limiting in the service and how many people. And then we'd have to keep people laid off because we have more staff than that number kind of sits at. So just looking at all those factors when people are kind of making these decisions and making a decision for a whole region based on really kind of a Toronto Peel problem, when regionally and in other regions, those are not the same kind of factors. So I just continued advocacy for regional, continue advocacy for funding, and just like have some people with cerebral thinking who can like figure out like these are, you know, logical things that we can do versus a whole wide sweeping kind of gesture. I think that's it.
No, Abba, that's great feedback. I will say that Ontario's new Chief Medical Officer of Health is certainly an advocate of regional reopening, and so that may come in handy for us if we need that. So, Abba, if I can just ask a couple of follow-up questions. So I think what I'm hearing from you is, even though personal services can open in stage 2, that your revenue is still going to be pretty limited until stage 3 or beyond.
Yeah, so stage 2, we're not allowed to do things with face covering. So like no facials, no microdermabrasion, things that are more higher value services. So we can do waxing, we can do manicure, pedicures, but we're just limited within that. And then we're also limited by numbers. So initially it said to a maximum of 5, and I guess maybe clarity as to whether that's 5 total or whether that's just 5 clients, because if it's 5 total, then that means like we have more than 5 staff per location. So then do we have to keep staff laid off? What is that process if we can't then bring them back to August, which is 21 days later, where we can then have our full services put in according to the calendar. So I think just kind of what are those specifics and why are they so arbitrary, and what are the rationale behind that, given that we have the things in place to make sure that everyone is compliant. We do contact tracing, everyone has dividers, we're in different rooms, we're wearing masks, we even have horizontal and vertical shields. So I'm not really sure what else we can do to kind of prove the point that the sector is doing what needs to be done.
Abba, the other question I have for you is, I have heard from some other municipal leaders in the province that have been hearing about, you know, is there a potential if we can't speed up the phases to look at, can we allow for at least more outdoor? And
so
is that something that would be helpful to personal services, or
it
no?
would. So we, because of Love Kingston last year, we had a manicure station, and this year we have actually like done an extended thing so that we can do more of those services outside, and we have an outdoor sink, so we'll be compliant with health KFL&A. But I did reach out to KFL&A, and they were very like, no, it's stage 2, there's no provisions, and which doesn't make sense. So now I'm going to lobbying to other ministries to see how that can be so, because we can have similar provisions just as restaurants can to do outdoor. We will be more than 6 feet apart. It's outside. Our clients will actually keep their mask on the whole time. And so I'm not sure. And I mean, there are lots of articles of people doing hair cutting in outdoors in Toronto. So is it that I just do it and I get a fine? Like, what is the implications? Because at this point, I would rather have people hired, get stuff done, and then take a hit. I'm not going to, I'm just saying. But it just feels like we're pushing people to find extremes in what they have to do in order to survive. And so I think, as I say, thinking outside that box, that if similarly, just as restaurants are allowed to do things in the outdoor capacity, can personal service have some sort of respite to do that similar thing if they can also follow the public health guidelines? So if they have a sink that's there, if they have the proper sanitization, can we be allowed to use an outdoor space until between now and stage 1 and continuing on?
No, that's helpful, because sometimes with advocacy, sometimes it's helpful to have a couple of different options, so you can push on one and just say, okay, well, how about this? And so sometimes that can be successful. So I'm going to take that back and see what we can do on that for sure.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Abba. Allison, maybe I'll go to you next. Just from the tourism sector, what should we be keeping our eyes on right now?
For sure. So, I mean, things that have already been mentioned, I won't go over those, but a few pieces that we're seeing specifically is, especially for things like cruises or, trolley tours, like guided tours within a venue or a vessel of some sort, there's not clarity as to what the capacity regulations will be. And especially on the cruise side, that's not a business that can just ramp up with a few days notice. I mean, I know most businesses can't do that, but they literally would have to hire, 100 or more people to be able to run safely. And there's been, I think, a lot of advocacy from these groups to the government, but for the most part, my understanding is essentially silence back. And so even if the regulations are set and will stay, clarity as to what they are so that they can plan for their reopenings, because they really can't at this point. The other piece that we were disappointed about is that museums were restricted to step 3, which is very confusing, given that, retail is non-essential retail is allowed to reopen. Why are other indoor activities allowed, but cultural spaces are not allowed? It just, quite frankly, doesn't make any sense. And for museums, especially in Kingston, they primarily open from spring until the fall. There's some that operate year round, but they very much rely on seasonal summer student staff to execute their programming. So at this point, a lot of them are looking at potentially not even opening this year, because on paper, it just doesn't make sense if they can't open until August. So that's really been very significant, because we have over 20 museums in Kingston that are affected by this. The other piece is that there is some advocacy at the provincial and national level starting to happen about reopening the border, which of course will be an important issue for tourism. And given our location, we would normally have visitors from New York State and elsewhere in the US. And so that conversation is just starting, is my understanding, but there's a lot of advocacy happening around, reopening the border in time for Canada Day or July 1 for the full summer season. I think on the basis that both Canada and US have strong vaccination rates at this point, and that is expected to continue. And so I think those conversations seem to already be happening at the federal level. I've seen, news articles about the quarantine process potentially changing if you're fully vaccinated and that sort of thing. But certainly the tourism sector is looking for clarity on that and encouraging that, alongside encouraging a regional approach, as we've already been discussing. And then I would say, outside of advocacy, just sort of at the point do we get to locally where we have clear messaging that the city welcomes visitors, whether those are regional visitors, whether those are visitors from elsewhere in Ontario. With this non-regional approach, there's not been a lot of conversation from the government about travel, right? And they've never said travel is not allowed, but they've obviously, we were under a stay-at-home order, so that was pretty clear that you shouldn't be traveling, and we haven't been marketing into those primary markets, and had messaging out that sort of said the best way to stay safe is to stay home, and we look forward to seeing you when the time is right. we're anticipating being quite local over the next few weeks, moving to regional, and then moving hopefully back into our primary market, sort of aligned with that step 3. But clarity, I think, across the board as to when there would be a supportive message that we are sort of back open for business as normal for tourism would be great as well.
Thanks, Alison. That's helpful. I agree that clarity piece is really important for planning, and so I'll see if we can get some sort of indication from that. I agree that the travel piece is unclear. If the province doesn't go with a regional approach, and so the whole province is moving into phase 1, is full travel across the province, then okay, and it's not entirely clear. I think people are a little bit confused for sure. Okay. Excellent. Karen, maybe I'll go to you next. Just from your view at the Chamber, as we move into reopening, what is it that we should be watching for? How can we help? What other things should be on our radar right now?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. There are a number of calls that are coming into the Chamber, and they really echo a lot of what I've just heard from Abba and from Alison. I'm sure if I had not been late and had heard from Tim, I'm sure they're going to be the same challenges I'm hearing from our member base. And that is around the capacity issue and the lack of clarity. And that goes for many sectors. I mean, ABBA representing personal care, it's who I'm hearing from is the personal care. I'm also hearing from fitness center operators, the small boutique operators who are again, they're not being able to open until phase 2. And then Alison mentioned the tourists, the boat lines and all the tourism types of pieces. So there's just not a lot of clarity around that. I know we've had conversations at the OCC level as to how we can find ways to advocate on that level on that. The other part that I'm hearing from and sat on a round table with Minister Security's office this week with one of our members is around the small business grants, and we wanted to continue that program needs to have another infusion to the business community as a whole, and that they need to look at their processes as to getting those funds out there. The member that was on the call with me this week had been 140 days since he had received the $20,000 that he'd been approved for. So those are some of the things that we're working on here. Hearing from some of our hotel partners is workforce gaps where they're not able to bring in employees to be able to do what they need to do to turn rooms over. They're already maxed at this point, and getting folks back into the businesses is a challenge. And then lastly, the one thing that we're working with the CCC and the Greater Kingston Chamber of Commerce signed a letter with the CCC going to the Minister of Finance and the Minister of National Revenue, is that was a support of a three hours of paid leave to allow employers to be able to have their employees go and be vaccinated. And they're looking at a fixed amount per employee as a payroll remittance to CRA as just another incentive to help those employers, small businesses have their employees vaccinated without taking the hit on their bottom line. So those are, I guess, some of the things that are happening right now. And of course, our distribution center is still going strong, and we certainly saw a big uptick in responses to people wanting to sign up for the program to get their rapid testing kits for their staff as we get into this first phase.
Excellent, and thanks, Karen, to the Chamber for the work. I know that's been a hugely beneficial program for sure. So thank you, and thanks for that intel. Mary Jo, I know you're week 3 on the job, but would love to just hear from you, just if there's anything you're hearing from your end that we should be watching for or thinking about as we move into reopening.
Well, a couple of the members of the BIA have said a lot of the really sort of pressing issues, but I think there's also the side that I'm hearing from people who are getting ready to open right now, which is the reminder to the general public that we are still in a pandemic, and to, number one, be respectful of the safety protocol that is in place. And secondly, really practicing kindness and patience with our employees and our business owners, because they've been through a lot. So we're doing a lot of that kind of advocacy on our social media channels, but if there's anything that the city can do to just remind people that we're still in it. My worst nightmare is coming down here Friday and seeing just gobs of people everywhere. We still have to be careful so that we don't end up in the same situation in September.
Would you say that there's some level of nervousness then?
Yes, definitely. I've heard it from many retailers in particular, and a few restaurants. So it's a topic of conversation.
No, that's great. That's good to know for sure. That's actually probably a good segue to Susan. Susan, we've talked a lot about, how do we reopen and how do we get things going again, but would be interested to know what it is that we need to watch for, red flags or warning signs or anything that might cause us to have delayed or slowed progress to that reopening. Is there anything that you can kind of share with us that we should be watching for?
Well, good morning and thank you. From a public health perspective, what we're going to be watching for are the number of new cases. We have been seeing decreasing cases in KFLNA and also in Hastings, Prince Edward, and Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark. So regionally, we're doing very, very well. But as Mary Jo said, we're still in a pandemic, and I know it feels like with reopening. I mean, I think the anticipation for everyone to get outside and go to a patio or go into a store is almost palpable. And it's very exciting, and we're well poised to do that locally. But what we're going to be watching for is the Delta variant, which is now, we predict is going to be the predominant strain over the summer. It is more infectious than the original COVID virus and also the Alpha virus, or the B117, also known as the British strain. So we're going to be watching for that. In terms of the severity of illness, we are still assessing whether or not that variant causes more illness. So we'll be monitoring that very closely, new cases, and also the impact on the healthcare system. We'll also be monitoring the vaccination rates. So we've got a great start in the province and locally as well. So we're going to continue to monitor that and to push that. This week, we're opening the clinics for school-aged children and their families. We're really setting the stage so that we can get back to normal in September and faster. I mean, if the vaccines roll out faster than that. So we are cautiously optimistic, but we'll be monitoring new cases and also for the Delta variant locally and across the province. And while we're doing really well locally, all of our indicators in KFLNA are in the green of the old framework, but that's not the case across the province. So we're still seeing high cases in Toronto and Peel. And as our esteemed Chief Medical Officer of Health now, Dr. Kieran Moore, has said, a rising tide lifts all ships. I think that's what he said. So while it seems like those cases are far away in Toronto, we will be monitoring them to see if they begin to spread across the province, as we saw with other variants. But we are very optimistic. We're looking forward to the opening and supporting that however we can. And what we know is that our partners in the community, our restaurant partners, our retail partners, our personal service setting partners have really worked hard to make it safe for all of their clients in the community. And I think that there's a lot of trust in the establishments in KFLNA that when they go in, they feel safe. And so for all of that, I thank you for that. And I thank all of you for your partnership in this. And I do hear what you're saying today and the frustrations you have with the decisions and the Reopening Act. Unfortunately, we cannot make local exceptions to provincial legislation. If we could, we'd be living in a very different world, but that's a reality.
That's great. Thanks, Susan. I appreciate that. And yes, we understand those local constraints. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question for Susan. With the Reopening Act, we know we're limited in terms of seating and outdoors and 4 people per table. If you're able to answer this in terms of all the other safety protocols, for instance, PPE, servers wearing goggles, contact tracing, all of those, what level are we at? Or is that's not been made very clear. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
So a lot of that was in the old framework about what had to happen at green, yellow, orange, and red. And now we have the Reopening Act. I can't answer that question off the top of my head, but what I can do is talk with our enforcement team and see what we can share with this group. So it's about PPE with goggles, sanitizers, the things that were in place before, and the contact tracing
exactly.
lists.
And there's various versions of them. So at one point we had to get just the contact tracing information for one person in the party, and then it went to everyone in the party.
Right.
At one point there were no safety goggles, then there were. I'm assuming we're going back to the most rigid protocols, but it's just I don't know where to find this information.
So I'll take that back and see what I can find out and get something out to this group as soon as I can to provide whatever clarity we can.
Great, thank you very much.
Great question, Tim. Thanks for that, Susan. Any other questions for Susan? Any other comments on this discussion? Tricia.
It seems going through the group that the advocacy for regional approach would be something that would be very appreciated at this point. And that goes for all businesses that require the people model. And so if we look at the performing arts, the heritage sector, the personal services, restaurants, and hotels, that to go for a regional model at this point seems to be a point of advocacy. And the other, that's point one. Point two, if that's not going to happen, then the provincial and federal funding of those industries for emergency funding has to continue.
No, it's a great comment, Trish, and I agree. There have been a number of discussions that have been building across the province, certainly among municipal leaders, and I think that while there was some concern with the old regional framework, where there were 34 different regions, and for example, in the GTA, you could drive, for 10 minutes to go from York region, into Peel or into Durham. But I think that the understanding is that, well, it doesn't have to be a regional approach, doesn't mean you have to divide the province into 34 different regions. You could have, for example, the GTHA treated as one region, and then the rest of the province treated as another. So that's sort of where the discussion is at this point. But certainly every municipal leader that I've spoken to outside of the Toronto area, I think certainly as case numbers have come down, are more anxious to see that approach if needed. If continued higher numbers in Toronto and Peel are slowing things down, I think there's going to be more vocal calls for that approach, for sure. Putnam.
Maybe this is a question for Susan, or maybe it's yours, but with the regional approach, how do you avoid people coming to the community? Because I know that, for example, in congregate settings, and Susan's well aware of this, we've done such a great job of isolating people, but when one person came from Ottawa, for example, it created a whole ripple because we had to isolate 11 people and scramble to get them a space. So how do we avoid that?
So, Susan, do you want to go first?
Sure. It's my understanding that there isn't any appetite at the provincial level to do any kind of limit of travel within the province. Even in the height of the third wave, the province wasn't entertaining those discussions. And so what we learned the last time we started to reopening the economy was that if you opened something in one area but not another area, people traveled to go to those areas. And so I think that's why the government this time is taking a different approach, doing it by sector, so that if you're opening patios and you can have a table of 4, you can do that throughout the province. And I think that is their attempt to limit people traveling from region to region. because there was a lot of travel from the GTA to other places where things were open. So I don't think there's anything that we can do. I don't think there's anything we should do to keep people out of our community. I think for the vulnerable section, there's certain risks. And of course, Bhavna and I, we've had lots of conversations about that, and we have that working group to look at that. But I think that the safety protocols that businesses have put in place, I think have been very successful. So I wouldn't want to create an atmosphere of fear of not welcoming people or questioning where people are from. I don't think that's useful. I don't think it's constructive, and I don't think it adds anything to safety.
Mary Jo.
I'm sure everybody can relate to your inbox lighting up every time something changes in public health, getting an email from several different organizations saying basically the same thing, but possibly positioned a little bit differently in communication. One of the things that I would love to see is for the city of Kingston to have a central hub that has, and I know the health department has a website and has information on it. I was just looking at it a couple of minutes ago, but I'm looking for that sort of, okay, we're in the new phase. Here we are, rather than pointing them to some of the stuff that's a little bit more difficult to digest, especially for people who are stressed out. I think it would save hours of communication teams' time if that was a common message across the board. Just a suggestion.
Well, thanks, Mary Jo. And I know that communication is a big piece, and I know that there's been certainly over the last year a lot of work to try to coordinate those messages between the city and the chamber, downtown BIA, and TK and others. So yeah, for sure. Abba.
Hi, sorry. I think it's just kind of a thought. I think we have to look at last year, for example, because now we have a benchmark that we have kind of gone through this. Last summer, there was travel with the regional approach. And because of the protocols that were put in place in general in Kingston, there's no evidence that showed that, that significantly disrupted, outbreaks at restaurants or personal services because we had the screening and the sanitization and those things. So I'm wondering, are we actually using the data? Because if this happened last year and people are traveling now, like I went to pick up some food and there were some people biking from Toronto. So I think the idea that this is, stopping people from going region to region is ridiculous because people are going to move regardless of whether, it's officially stated that something is regionally approached or not, because people want to move and they're doing so. They're having barbecues of more people, they're traveling back and forth. So I'm just saying, if we look at what happened last year, even with people coming from different regions, because we had such strict protocols and people were following it, we minimized the spread and we were able to keep things to the summer. So I'm just wondering if, can that not be reflected upon and just shown in our advocacy piece that, we have done this before, and here is the results in Kingston and KFLNA, because that's who we're speaking to, and show that there is validity for kind of continuing in that vein, because we have shown that we were able to do it successfully in the past.
Thanks, Abba. And that point has been made that certainly, last summer, the regional approach actually went quite well. I know that there are some questions and thoughts with the new variant, lead to different experiences on that. But I think your other point I've also heard that that the province-wide approach could actually lead to more travel, because if we're all in the same zone together and there's not much comment from the provincial level for travel, we'll actually see more. So it's something that we're keeping an eye on. It's something that I've certainly heard as well. So this is excellent feedback and comments, folks. Thank you. I've been taking notes as we go, but I don't want to cut it off. If there's anything else, comments or questions or ideas to throw out. This has been certainly very useful for me. Okay. Super. So thank you. So at this point, then we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is talking about the transition to the more longer term future focus of KERT. So we had discussed this at our previous meeting, that we've spent most of the last year just trying to assist businesses and hard hit sectors through relief phase. Obviously, as the pandemic has continued, but we heard a lot at our discussion at our last meeting about a desire to continue that work and shift that focus to more, from recovery and more longer term rebuilding and what does that look like. So I think that this is a good time to have this discussion. Hopefully, by the time we have our next meeting, that will be at least in stage 3 and hopefully through most of this. So I guess my question to the group is, what, if anything, do we need to change with the way that we have structured KERT right now? So right now we meet as a group every couple of months, and then we have 4 working groups that meet every 6 weeks, community confidence and workforce and underrepresented groups and funding and advocacy. So is that the right structure for us to continue with, and just within each of those working groups and within this discussion that we start to shift our minds to more longer term planning and more future focus? Or do we need to make changes? Are there things that we should be doing differently? Are there changes in the setup and whatever that looks like? So I'd just be interested to get everybody's thoughts. And again, I'd like to hear from everybody, so I might go around the screen one more time. Just your thoughts on what do we change? What do we keep doing? And what do we change as we move into year 2 of KERT? So I'm not sure, would someone like to kind of kick that off? Anyone have ideas at the top of their head? And Trish, yeah, go ahead.
I think I've been advocating as well for that future orientation right now, so that we're preparing Kingston for an economic blooming. And Craig has been doing just fabulous work and educating the KERT committee on future trends, especially with the multi-platform delivery of products and services, and how can we actually support the buy local through current and future means. So I think it's really important that we are preparing organizations for a future where commerce is actually done very differently. And I know from the arts sector that the arts sector is going to be delivered on multiple platforms. So we're funding innovation, but we're also funding current buying behavior that is much different than the pre-COVID behavior. And we can actually prepare the city for something quite wonderful, given such a strong team that you have at the City of Kingston. And again, congratulations to Craig for all the work that he's been doing in this field.
And thanks, Tricia. So maybe just to probe on that a bit. So you mentioned, obviously continuing work on the Buy Local campaign and, what sort of innovations we can do in digital space. Do you feel that that the existing framework that we have is tackling those things, or do we need to refine the approach and the way we're tackling those things right now?
It would be great to dedicate one meeting to future trends to see if we are tackling them. And I think that would be, whether it's community wellness or buyer behavior and community confidence, it's very important for us to look at all the future trends that are happening, including AI, that will really restructure the whole workforce. So to have that future orientation for the committee, so that we can actually be making decisions within the context of one of the greatest exponential changes in society that we're all going to witness over the next decade.
That's excellent. So Tricia, you put forward a suggestion that we maybe have dedicated to discuss some of those future trends. So I'm just gonna be writing stuff down as we go. So maybe if I can ask from each member of the group, just maybe a couple of things that you think we should be focused on, whether it's something that we're already working on or something that we should be working on that maybe we haven't gotten to. And then your comments on, are we prepared to tackle that, or do we need to think of other ideas about how we have that discussion? Yeah.
I guess I can speak to the underrepresented group. I think, the recent events with the discovery of the 215 Indigenous children, and then the recent events in London has shown us that we really have to do a lot more education in terms of equity and biases that people have. And I think it's not just a KERT type thing. I think we have to continue to build on. We had done that first kind of series with that our group, and I think maybe we need to continue that, because I think through education is how we kind of bring that equitable table there. And so I think it's a long-term vision as to this is what we want as a community to strive for. And so perhaps things that we can work on are continuing to build those tools so that employees and employers and organizations and the city can work together to continue to push those educational pieces, because the more that we know, then the more that we can do. And so I think that for the underrepresented, and it also highlighted that here are the people that have been affected. So how can we continue to make sure that we support those groups? Even we spoke about it's simple things like even getting access to jobs because of Wi-Fi and not being directly able to go into all the different agencies right now to find out about information. So how do we tailor things so that not just for this pandemic, but in general, that all these people can access the information that they need so that they can go out and be employed? And how do we then tap into the employees to say, here are some of the challenges, and make it easier so that they can connect with those people? Because right now, there's an imbalance. We know people are looking for employees, but their employees are there who are not getting that information. So how can we kind of continue to transition that bit, make that awareness, and then so that we can support and build as a community for everyone? I think that's important. So whether it's through continued workshops, whether it's through continued toolkits that have been developed, and then just looking at what are the barriers that we have found so that we can build on this forever, not just during a pandemic. And then maybe Pavna could talk to too, from the last KIT meeting, we also had we've kind of broke off under the mental health for employees. So kind of working with Resolve Counseling to try to get some workshops going. I'm not quite sure of the status. I think it's still ongoing, to support small businesses and their employees who may not have EAP programs, and really listening to what the employees said, where they want something that's local and doesn't seem disjointed, that somebody who understands the issues of a local community and of the businesses and the employees, and doesn't seem like a one-off type thing. And so I think those are things that are important to continue on, because it's going to be needed, not just till September, but for a long period of time. And then they can adjust as they go on into a phased out or phased in approach of different types of means, but just things like that. So those are my two kind of points.
No, that's great. Thanks, Abba. So I'm just noting some of the things you've put forward. I mean, access to Wi-Fi. I mean, that's something that we're talking a lot about as a city. You talk about workshops and tools. The mental health strategy, I think, is great. Do you feel that these pieces that you're raising, do you feel like the underrepresented group and the KERT structure that we're making progress on that? Is there anything that you feel needs to be adjusted from just like a structural point of view as a group in terms of how we're operating?
Well, I think there was validity in having those workshops. I think people who did the first one found a lot of stuff. So just maybe fine-tuning and figuring out what it is that either side needs so that we can tailor things better towards that. I think it was good in that, from one viewpoint, it enabled us to kind of see some of the categories where things were missing. But I think really we need to also focus on speaking to those groups themselves and getting filtered up from them what their needs are, so that we as a committee can then fill in those gaps to meet those needs. And Padma has a hand up, I think, for the mental health or something else.
Great,
Well,
thanks.
I'll speak to that, but I also wanted to, I'm torn, because I think this is our opportunity as a community to really think big and broad and long term. I think we can look at trends and opportunities, and that's something city staff are really good at. And I think we need to have that at the back of our mind. But this is our chance to really look at what we need to be in the future as a community. And it's a one-off chance that we're going to get, because it's part of healing, recovering. And I know that sounds big. And I think certainly looking at the committees and using some of the lenses is fine. But I think those were very tactical, on the ground. Now is what we need to do. But I think there are lots of opportunities for us to think about, yes, we are the tourism capital of the country. Apparently, we have a lot of at stake, but how do we convert some of those jobs into stable employment with benefits? Because in a pandemic, we've seen what happens with those kind of, insecure jobs. How do we transform into a community that respects equity, diversity, and indigenization, right? How do we build all that? So I think this is our chance to look big and then step back and look at what trends and opportunities that lead to the vision, rather than have the opportunities and trends dictate where we go. Just a thought.
That's excellent, Pavna. Do you have do you have any thoughts on how to do it? Is that a facilitated session? Is that again like a dedicated meeting where we just come and we start to think and to brainstorm on those pieces? Do you have any suggestions then on how we would how to best tackle that piece?
Certainly there are lots of different ways we can approach this, but I think each of us is representing a sector. So maybe speaking with our sector, but also speaking with sectors that cross over, like, social services are dependent on the economy too. So how do we understand the intersections and then come up with some kind of visions that we share and jointly come up with? And I know that sounds very kind of blue sky, but this is our chance. And certainly the tactical pieces, this community is amazing at innovating and finding ways, but I think we start with a vision and then we look at the opportunities rather than looking at the opportunities first, and that dictates where we go. Just a slight shift in focus, I think. And then the committees will form. And I think the great work that Craig's team is doing, that's going to continue. They're very efficient, they're hardworking, they'll find a way. But I think, again, it needs to support a common vision that brings all sectors together. And now come right down to earth with the mental health piece. We are working with Resolve to find support for small businesses. Karen and ABBA and a couple of other people are now working together to develop that so we can support small businesses. But that's the easy part. The tactical on the ground, we can find solutions. We're innovative, we're resourceful, we'll find the resources. But I think I would love to see us going big.
Excellent. No, thanks, Pavna. That's great. Great comments for sure. Who haven't we heard from? Tim, we'd love to hear your thoughts about where we're at and where we need to go. What do we need to keep doing and what do we need to change?
Sure. I agree wholeheartedly with Abba's and Bhavna's comments. There is a big opportunity here, and I think we can't forget that COVID, this pandemic, has been a lot of inequality in terms of how it's affected different groups. And we've got to make sure that we don't leave those that were hurt the hardest behind, while those who are sort of on the top of the ladder are benefiting from the big economic boom that I'm sure is to come. So how do we bring everyone into this new future, and how can we work as a group to ensure that we're not just focused on business, et cetera. Even though we are an economic recovery team, you can't really have a healthy economy without a healthy community. And I think this pandemic kind of ripped a Band-Aid off our community and exposed a lot of holes in the safety nets, and a lot of agencies were stressed. So I think it's important that we realize that this is an opportunity for a big picture change. And also, I think while it's great to think about the future and how we become resilient and digital transformations, et cetera, there still is going to be a long road to recovery. So there's going to be a sort of two-pronged approach that we're looking to the future and how we change to be resilient and how we adapt new technologies and strategies, but also how do we still keep people from floundering and businesses from floundering, because this is a long road ahead. And Susan, of course, pointed out there's a new variant. Who knows where we're going to be? It's we're still in this, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But it'd be great to be able to bring people up from where they were before, and instead of just sort of moving on.
Yeah, that's great, great, Tim. Great comments, and I certainly agree. No question. Craig, I'm wondering if you want to jump in and give us your thoughts. I mean, you and your team are busy supporting all the work that KERT's been doing. Do you have any thoughts on on next steps. We've talked about, visioning and, big picture thinking, connecting, economic and social recovery together. We're talking about, as Pavna said, this opportunity that may only come once to kind of reinvent how we're going forward. Do you have any thoughts just on what we should be focusing on and any recommendations on structure that might help us get there?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And yes, very excited about the comments from everybody. I took the liberty of sharing a link in the chat to an article that just came in from our Bloomberg partners that really talks about, sort of the where cities are going to, in the future across the world. And it's interesting how much alignment there is. And there were two things that sort of struck me that really sort of tie into the comments that all of you were making. The one is the increased role of the municipal government that we've seen as a result of the pandemic and the response. My boss is on the call, so I'm not going to suggest we're looking for more opportunities for new service delivery. But maybe what we've learned out of the last year and a half is that our role as a facilitator, a coordinator to support the integration is a really, not to say that we didn't do that before, but I would suggest that those roles are becoming more and more important. And that really ties to the second comment, which is about engaging organizations, but even more so our residents in coming up with ideas, co-creating. I'm going to be doing a little presentation in a few minutes about that. But I would say, again, like the fact that we've all, and again, I look at Pavna and the incredible leadership she's provided with the partners in the social services sector, like that tactical response in such a rapid way is a reflection of the alignment and integration. The question that I think that Pavna poses very, very appropriately is, how do we take that tactical collaboration and integration and do that on a strategic level? And how do we vision where we want to be? And then, like, we've got lots of really smart people in our community. We can work together with the residents, with organizations to actually create execution of that vision. But yeah, you've heard a lot about the Great Reset, and again, I certainly believe that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to sort of address some underlying challenges. I've said it before that I think that economic health and social services, social health, are more evidently linked than they ever have before. And Tim commented about making sure that the safety net is more secure. Economic prosperity is a great way to make everything more secure. We just have to be more mindful about how the interrelationship from these factors are. I'm certainly more, and I was certainly aware of it before, but it's been laid bare, I think. I would say the integration and alignment piece, and again, how do we not go back to the old ways? I would hate to see that all this progress that's been made on so many fronts is we slip back into our old behaviors. Anyway, hopefully that helps.
No, that's Craig. I appreciate your comment about not wanting to go back to the way things were. I think that's the key piece for sure. How do we cement some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, and how do we then create more integrated thinking as a community for sure? I wanted to just invite anybody else, Karen or Mary Jo, Lanny. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Patterson. So I just to maybe add to Craig's comments and trying to find a path forward. I think it's clear that people are looking for more integration, especially on the social services side. And I know there's a social services recovery team that's doing a lot of great work. So maybe it's looking at ways that we can create better integration with the work that's happening at that level. And I know Pavna obviously is part of both groups. And I also think that maybe having a facilitated session to look at how do we move forward and focus on the strategic aspect of our work rather than tactical response. I know that was quite successful, obviously, for the working group, the establishment of the working group. So I think this could be useful as well. And looking at maybe the sectors we might want to focus more on. We know, for example, that construction has been doing relatively well throughout the pandemic and continues. So maybe it's not somewhere where we need to spend as much effort, but that's something that could come out of the strategic sessions.
Thanks, Lanny, for the great comments and suggestions. So I think what I'm hearing, I think, is perhaps that maybe our next meeting, which I propose in 2 months' time, would be in August, that perhaps we make that, a more facilitated session where we can kind of do some of this visioning and big picture thinking, kind of lay out some of these thoughts and ideas. Does that seem like the right approach for everybody? Is there any other thoughts? Okay, Mary Jo.
I'm just wondering, everything that everybody has said seems like a wise direction to go, but for me, what's missing, and this might just be because I'm new here and I haven't had access to a lot of the tools and information that's out there, but I'd really like to almost do like an audit or a survey or some kind of measurables to give us a baseline as to where we are right now. We've all gone through the war together, but I think we all have an idea of sort of where people are. And I totally understand that we're all surveyed out just like we are Zoomed out. But if we could very thoughtfully come up with some kind of, we have BRNEs, I'm sure you guys do too, paying an organization to actually get out and get that information and then give it to us so that we know that we're succeeding or we know that we're not. And that could be as specific as Lanny was talking about in terms of different industries or sectors.
Mary Jo, it's a great comment, and I will say, as a member of the funding and advocacy working group, that one of the things that we have talked about is a data dashboard and kind of putting those pieces together so we know where we're at and where we're going and help to kind of inform that work. Craig, is there anything that you wanted to suggest or add on that piece?
Absolutely, and one of the suggestions, perhaps, I don't want to volunteer the Kingston Bloomberg team, but one of the things we're going to be presenting and talking about are new ways of engaging with teams, and maybe no disrespect to Eric Lockhart, he's a good friend and his facilitation was amazing, but maybe we want to use the model that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes to actually reimagine sort of the mandate of this group, or amplify or modify the group. And again, pulling in data points, pulling in comments and input from residents to actually do what's been suggested. I think that might be a really, really exciting opportunity to apply what we've just learned.
Excellent. That's great, Craig. And I didn't know that we were going to go segue so nicely into our final agenda item to have that presentation. So just before I do, really good discussion and great feedback. I just want to make sure I give an opportunity for anybody else that hasn't had a chance to jump in. Any other points or comments or thoughts that that we should think about? Otherwise, I think, yeah, Allison, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't have a lot to add. Just I think clarity for the subcommittees sort of in the meantime would be helpful. I know, for example, the tourism working group is very much a working group that was working from a specific budget to implement some legacy pieces that are kind of coming to a close. So if there's vision or direction for the committees in the meantime, that would be helpful.
No, thanks, Allison. I mean, I think what I would propose is that I think we carry on with the working groups as is. I think that they're doing great work, but for this group, kind of steering that work, that we'll do this session in August, and then that can help to inform changes and pivoting from there. So absolutely. Okay. Thanks, everybody. That was really great. So I think we've got some direction moving forward. So Craig, perfect timing to hand it over to you and to your team. Looking forward to the presentation and how that can help us with next steps on the visioning we've been talking about.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, everybody. Everybody can see my screen all right? Great. All right. Well, it certainly is very exciting, and as the Mayor Patterson has suggested, maybe a great segue. I wasn't sure how that was gonna go, but it couldn't actually been better. Members of KERT will remember that I guess about 4 or 5 months ago, we came to you with the first presentation, sort of talking to you about this exciting new innovation training that the City of Kingston team had sort of embarked upon in the midst of a pandemic. And just I talked a lot about process and sort of gave some high level direction. And today's presentation is really a quick recap of that for some of you that did attend or that are new to this group, but also a sort of a highlight of some of the themes that came out, what was the results of the development of some prototypes and some reflections. And fortunately, we have with us today a number of the team members from the Kingston team who have just been incredible in their contribution. And I think I also see a few people from Bloomberg and the Center for Public Impact here as well. So always happy to have them here and join us. They've become really incredible partners, and we look forward to more partnerships. They have a lot of programs that we'd love to access. So looking forward to continuing the dialogue. So I'll just get into the presentation and certainly want to leave as much time for questions and answers at the end as possible. So the presentation is entitled Driving Municipal Innovation Through Human-Centered Design. The City of Kingston is ushering in a new era of public sector innovation that promotes experimentation and flexibility within our organization, while at the same time seeking to engage residents in new ways to promote well-being. Human-centered design has provided us with a framework for continuous improvement despite the challenges of the global pandemic. In order to deliver on our vision of being a smart, livable, and leading community, Kingston Municipal Innovation Capacity includes an innovation strategy, staffing, and funding to support innovation programming. And perhaps it is equally important, access to local, timely, and frequent data that supports monitoring and evaluation of our outcomes. As I mentioned earlier, we're so fortunate that this path to innovation has been supported by the training program developed by Bloomberg Philanthropies. And some of you, or maybe some of you don't know, this is actually a picture of Mike Bloomberg, a former mayor of the city of New York City, also founder of Bloomberg conglomerate, Bloomberg News, a number of things. But most fortunately, the visionary and really the founder of Bloomberg Philanthropies. His vision is all about having experienced local government, driving innovation into municipal level of government. The teachings that municipal staff have applied has led to some incredible innovation techniques that engage residents in testing, adapting, and scaling creative ideas. The entire Bloomberg team, in particular our innovation coach, Alexis, who I think is here, we really want to thank you for this incredible opportunity. It has absolutely been a transformative experience for our team. And as I also already said, you've got a lot of other amazing programs. We would love to understand how we can partner with you in the future on some of these other programs. But beyond that, we've also been one of 15 cities across North America to be selected to participate in this program. And it's been amazing to see the impact in these other communities. The sharing of best practices and solutions and friendships that have been created has been especially valuable during the darkest days of the pandemic. What's really struck me, and we had a big event 2 weeks ago where each community sort of shared their solutions. What struck me the most was that the problems are almost identical across communities. We all share so many challenges, and how do we share our solutions? Very exciting. So with the help of Alexis, our design coach, the training has been delivered over a series of remote sessions on something called the Miro collaboration platform due to social distancing requirements. I think looking back, if you had asked me that it would go as well as it has, in a virtual environment. We were actually approved for this program in February of 2020, like literally weeks before I think Alexis had even booked her ticket to fly to Kingston to do on-site training. So I'm sure the Bloomberg team is equally amazed at how well we've been able to adapt our processes and our learning to a virtual environment. It has absolutely been absolutely amazing. The learning has been really designed to maximize collaboration and practical application of the human-centered design. The program, which ended in the end of May, just last week, has provided new skills and mindsets that help to better understand and address complex problems, and most importantly, to identify opportunities to scale innovation across City Hall and throughout our community. The process begins by understanding the problem from a problem definition and framing, which defines measurable outcomes. Field research and data has leveraged to refine that problem. Generating and testing of ideas was done with residents, and co-creation of ideas was implemented that gets to the root cause of the problem. The development of low-level, low-cost prototypes allows us to rapidly and inexpensively test what we create. And lastly, what we're looking for next is to pilot some of these project solutions and see how well they work in our community. As I said earlier, at the heart of this model is human-centered design, which can help create programs, policies, and services that are tailored to the needs of the people who will either use it or be impacted by it. That may sound simple enough until you consider how things in municipal government often work, with new programs developed by experts who sometimes don't always fully engage with their users. As a result, cities develop services that sometimes don't address the root cause of the problems. Over time, programs that get wrapped up in red tape and serve bureaucratic or legal interests rather than the residents. Human-centered design is about understanding the people you're serving, whether it's renters or property owners, pedestrians or bus commuters. In fact, the people you're designing for are deeply involved in every step of the creation. From defining a problem to creating solutions to testing and implementing. And I can't thank the residents that participated in our process enough. We had, I think, 30 or 40 different residents and resident advocates that took the time out of their busy schedules in the midst of a pandemic to participate in our process. It's really been incredible. Any city staff can learn these principles, and we're really looking forward to implementing that into the future. The Kingston team cuts across departments, functions, and levels of organizations. As I said, several of them are here today. It has been personally an incredible pleasure to get to know some of these members of the team. Again, we have frontline staff, we have other directors, managers. We even have our friends and partners, part of the family from Utilities Kingston. Kevin McCauley and Campbell Patterson are part of this. Again, it's been such an amazing learning experience. We've used ethnographic research tools to learn about problems or situations from the perspective of residents and other stakeholders. The goal is to build empathy by spending time with and where residents live, subject to pandemics, of course, in their homes, in workplaces, and in community centers, to really understand how they're living their lives. We're doing this for several reasons. First, human-centered design process is conducive to innovation. That's because it doesn't start with any preconceived notions of what the answer is or the limitations of we've always done it that way thinking. Instead, it starts with eyes wide open research into the user's needs. It also offers a more meaningful way of engaging residents rather than holding just another public meeting or offering residents 3 minutes to speak. Solutions are co-created with the very people who are expected to use them, all of which give municipal governments a path to becoming more responsive to residents and businesses. And as part of this process, there's lots of sticky notes. In this case, lots of virtual sticky notes. There's lots and lots of sticky notes, which is really a cool activity. And whether trying to connect the dots in research or brainstorming ideas, the team makes data visual. Which I think is a really important point. To succeed, municipalities must be open to the entirely new way of problem solving. Instead of formulating answers, city leaders need to get better at asking questions and be open to answering them, getting answers that they may not like or may not have been expected. Perhaps most importantly, the process requires support from city leadership. And we're so grateful to our CAO and mayor for their support of this project. I'm certain when I came to Lanny, we're in the midst of the start of the pandemic. I'm sure the last thing she imagined that we wanted to take on additional work. And really, this is a testament to the success we've had and the hard work that everybody's put into this is an absolute testament of staff commitment to making our community better. Organizations that are successful with design thinking are ones that make it accessible to everybody. And that's been proven as we've gone through this process. As you're aware, in order to learn, what we've done is apply the concepts we've been training on to the work underway from the Kingston Economic Recovery team. And we really focused on supporting workforce recovery, in particular those from underrepresented groups. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is a necessity for both economic and social health at both an individual and ecosystem level to build back our community prosperity. The specific problem that we've chosen to address is really that the community can often exclude newcomers, making them feel unwelcome. And we've heard that in sort of different forms as part of our research. One of the residents commented that Kingston can be a hard nut to crack. That really resonated with our group. The problem is that it can cause them to experience unemployment, financial instability, and ultimately it derails their path to personal and professional fulfillment, and it drives them to leave our community and restart their lives elsewhere. And certainly we've noticed that this has been amplified by the economic impacts of the pandemic. So we took our research findings and drew connections between different experiences we've heard, and the stories have been absolutely incredible, of courage, perseverance, profound hardship experienced by many of those who have chosen Kingston to be their new home. It was absolutely inspiring. It changed our team and really allowed us to start to ideate about what potential solutions could be. For the community, diversity and inclusion builds cultural vibrancy, but perhaps is equally important, and certainly from my economic development side, talent attraction to meet the longer term shortages of skills workers in Kingston, but also across Eastern Ontario. The reality is we're an aging population, and for the community to grow and our economy to grow, we need labor force, and that's going to come from outside. Job vacancies from retirements would need to be filled from people outside of the community. The disruption to the labor force brought on by the pandemic will only make this more challenging, and certainly has. Our team developed prototypes of ideas to test low-cost, low-stakes ways of making an abstract idea real. We tested the prototypes with residents to get feedback so that ideas could be more rapidly improved. This co-creating of solutions with residents was incredibly powerful and resulted in two solutions. One, a concierge service to welcome newcomers and connect them with social and employment opportunities. And the second, to provide affordable or high-speed free internet access, recycled computer hardware, and technology skill training. All of the residents who joined us provided some incredible input into this. The idea number one, the buddy system, as we've called it, would see a local person who acts as like a combination of concierge, coach, Sherpa, mentor to welcome and support the newcomer in Kingston for their first year here. The tests help us understand gaps within existing services offerings and design optimal user experience. The second, the Internet Oasis, we seek to provide free access to internet, laptops, and required training for marginalized newcomers in Kingston. It builds on existing programs that United Way and Keys Job Center have and have created with great success in the laptop and training. The one piece was access to high-speed internet. And that's one thing that the city, through Utilities Kingston, has a little bit of control of. The tests help us understand that we needed to tailor this program to individual needs. An umbrella program with everything perhaps isn't the right way to go. In terms of the prototyping process, there's some really exciting learnings, and again, hopefully it resonates with some on this call. One of the ones that really surprised me, perhaps it shouldn't have, was the language barriers are much more prevalent than I expected. And the impacts on newcomers' access to service was incredibly dramatic. It shouldn't have been a surprise, but it's been amazing to see how many newcomers have very little English. Due to sociocultural beliefs, newcomers were much more comfortable talking to a person rather than an agency. We were amazed at how open and sharing individuals were as part of our process. It was quite exciting. This one-on-one interaction was preferred over a technological interface. I think it's easy, and I have the habit of jumping to making an app for something, solving it with technology. The reality is that people wanted face-to-face interaction. Certainly, the role of technology can be as an assist, but it wasn't a replacement for that one-on-one human interaction. Newcomers find it very difficult to develop professional and personal relations due to a lack of local knowledge and cultural differences. I think Canadians sometimes think that that it's easy. We don't have a lot. We're very assimilating, and we don't have a lot of unusual sort of cultural behavior. But actually, we do. Every community, every society is unique, and certainly Canada has a lot of unusual traditions and behavior, and some of it extends into work behavior and work etiquette in Canada. And again, helping newcomers understand those changes, those differences, we understand it to be very important. Tests have shown that there's a value beyond employment in helping them find their place in the community, being a part of a social community, a social network, obviously critically important. And finally, cultural differences and access to technology plays a very important role in searching for employment, and that shouldn't be surprising. I wanted to give an opportunity, and as I said, a couple of members of our team are here, to sort of share their reflections. And maybe, Heather, if you're here, maybe I can call on you to sort of be the first up to make some comments. Or maybe not. There, sorry. Maybe we'll try Julie. How about Julie? Are you there, Julie?
Hi, Craig. Yes, I'm here. Thanks. Thanks so much for inviting me today. It's been so fun seeing all of the reflection on this program, and just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. I've been using what I've learned in this program pretty much on the daily. So understanding how to facilitate meetings better, and also just, I think, using all those new qualitative research techniques that we learned to be a better listener has been really, really valuable. And also, I think understanding from individuals what challenges they have has been really, just really great. I know Lakshay and I were able to work through a translator to talk to people who couldn't speak to English. And that was a really valuable experience for both of us. So I look forward to continuing, using all of these tools in our work and hopefully sharing it with my colleagues as well. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Julie. And Julie's our manager of marketing and public engagement, and she's been an incredible asset to the team. Next, maybe I could ask Kevin McCauley from Utilities Kingston. Kevin, whether you make some comments if you're there.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig. I think what I have on the screen and what I shared is that by training and by schooling, I'm an engineer, and engineers are really good at numbers. We're really good at spreadsheets and numbers. One of the things that design thinking and the process that we went through with Bloomberg really brought to the forefront for me is that keeping people and the effect on people is really important as you go through a process of trying to solve something. It's not just always about the most optimal solution by the numbers, but keeping the effect of people at the forefront of what we're doing and how what we're designing and what we're solutioning is going to end up having an effect on the community at large. So that really stuck with me as we worked through this process.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Next, Jeff Bumstead, our Chief Information Officer. Jeff, if you're there, I wonder if you had any comments.
Thanks, Craig, and again, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this team. It really was a valuable learning experience, both I think internally and externally for the entire team, and one that is, as others have said, we certainly plan on applying and using internally. One of the things that I mentioned that I really took away from this, although I think we intuitively know the importance of engagement, was just how appreciative everyone we talked to was about the opportunity to share their stories and be listened to and heard. I think everyone that we spoke to was really appreciative of the chance. It was a privilege for us to hear their stories and engage with them. And obviously, we all know that action is important. We have to follow through with action. But I think it's really just highlighted how important it is to engage and listen to people if you want their ongoing partnership and support through programs. So that was one big takeaway for me. Once again, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And lastly, maybe I'll ask Mark Nardi, our communications officer for my team, just to provide a few comments. Mark?
Thanks, Craig. I guess one of the big takeaways I had was sort of the fact that human-centered policy development is a team sport, and there was a huge benefit to having multiple skill sets and experiences at the table when we were interviewing, putting the person first whenever we were asking these sorts of questions. Like Kevin mentioned, he's a numbers person, he's an engineer. I come from a very different background, and I think it was really interesting to go through the interview process with my team members and be able to switch in and out of roles and find different ways of engaging with residents to get the information we need. I think at the end of the day, I was really, really proud of just how the entire team worked together to support each other.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you all, everyone, for their insights. Municipal governments play a critical role in tackling some of the biggest challenges we face, from combating the pandemic to reducing carbon emissions. But in order to be successful, ideas must have the potential to significantly improve the lives of our residents. Through development of the co-create ideas supporting newcomer inclusion, we've empowered staff and residents alike to reach their full potential by strengthening leadership, innovation, and collaboration skills. The broader community outcome of the project is sustainable economic development. I have to throw this in because I'm an economic development person. But it's really made possible by innovative municipal programs and services that support business development, jobs, and growth. As I previously said, adopting new process has not been easy. We know economic recovery from the pandemic won't be fast or easy. It's absolutely going to be a marathon rather than a sprint. And while the collective economic recovery is about how we respond to the pandemic shock and ultimately return to pre-pandemic activity, our community resilience will rely on our ability to withstand the next shock and to adapt to changing circumstances over time. This project has highlighted that community capacity building requires skilled, trained, and innovative workforce. And that the more skilled workers that you have in the community, the quicker the local economy adapts to disturbances. Just to close off, innovation is about being bold on purpose. And as we've discovered in our learning journey over the last 7 months, it can be uncomfortable, stressful, and downright hard, especially during a pandemic. But it can also be energizing and incredibly validating as a municipal employee, reminding us that what we do across the many lines of our business is important, that it can change the lives of residents, and that what we do matters. To each of the project team members, Julie, Cam, Mark, Lakshay, Omateo, Kevin, Lori, Jeff, Heather, thank you for your commitment. This was over and above your already busy workloads, made even busier by the pandemic. You contributed incredible amounts of time and effort to advance your skill sets and to come up with solutions to help our community. So I'm going to close off and simply open it up for questions and say, do you have any feedback on our solutions? And happy to meet with any of you afterwards. Is there any interest in participating in the pilot projects? Any suggestions or any other key considerations or any implementation support? Happy to throw it back to you, Your Worship, and facilitate discussion. But again, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Craig. A big thank you to you and your team. That was amazing. I love the presentation. Love the ideas that have come forward. It's fantastic. It's so exciting. So I'm going to actually, open up the floor to questions, feedback, thoughts, comments, anything from the group. It's always the first person. Yeah,
the ABBA.
Okay, Tricia, and then to ABBA.
A very brief question. Craig, can you send that presentation around? It's fabulous that you're looking at design thinking and prototyping. And I love the integration of the social wellness as well as the economically resilient community. It's a very holistic approach, so congratulations. But a copy of the presentation for the group would be great.
I know. I just also wanted to say I thought it was really good. I particularly like the creating impact with those images of those two cute kids. No, I'm just kidding. My kids, by the way. But
I know.
I also hope that, like, I think this is awesome, but I just hope, and no mention was kind of put into the longevity of this plan, because I think sometimes we have these things and it's great, and so the staff have this knowledge now. So then, where does that get transferred? How is that going to be put in place so that these tools, are transferred from staff to staff and not lost with the current people who have done the project? Because often, these things are great at the onset. It's a good initial thing, and then it just kind of falls through the cracks. So just hoping that there's some sort of thought behind the continuation of this, so that it doesn't become a one-off and then it's lost when this team goes, and then we have to redo it again.
I think that's a really great and valid question, Abba. And one of the I guess the motivations, or one of the thinking behind aligning this work with the KERT economic recovery team was that the sort of themes that we were working on, I think, resonate with the economic recovery. And again, I think it's going to be moving forward hand in glove. And I was so excited when someone raised the issue of access to broadband before I did the presentation for those that are challenged. That was totally unprompted. But that's, these are pressing, real and meaningful issues, and they're going to have to be addressed. So again, the fact that we have the active participation of Utilities Kingston, which is holds our fiber broadband assets. These are critical partnerships and engagements. So this wasn't an engagement. We came up with a solution, and now we have to go and ask the partners for their participation. They actually co-created it. So when we looked at, there's lots of challenges to solve. I'm sure Kevin has been thinking about these all along, but the reality is that he's been involved, Cam Patterson have been involved as we've created this. So I'm really hopeful and very positive that it's going to make the implementation that much easier.
Craig, Abba, great comments, and Craig, appreciate that. I certainly, you have my full support to drive those forward. Those are really, really exciting projects for sure. Other thoughts, input from the group? Okay, that's great. Yeah,
Your Worship, I see one of our Bloomberg friends.
Welcome, Right? Yes, absolutely. Just jump right in.
Hello, Mayor Patterson. I just wanted to say on behalf of the Center for Public Impact and Bloomberg Philanthropies, just a huge thank you to the incredible work from this team. I, for one, have been so inspired by watching your journey from a start on really looking at COVID-19 and the unemployment crisis to addressing challenges that are much deeper than just COVID-19. And I'm so inspired by this really positive approach to welcoming people to your community and the thoughtful engagement that you've had with everyone in your community. So thank you so much for the incredible work. We are so eager to watch your journey as you move forward, and really appreciate the relationship with Kingston. And to Mayor Patterson, we often talk about innovation as really a culture that needs to be supported both from the bottom up, but also top down. And so to see the commitment from the senior leadership team is so impressive. And we're really excited to see where innovation goes in the city of Kingston.
Amazing. Thanks, Pariah. And right back at you. We so appreciate the partnership with you. It's been incredibly exciting, and certainly has charted a course for us that we're, it's perfectly timed, and we're excited to lead the way for sure. Thank you.
I've been having spotty internet, but I can't not pipe up and say congratulations to the team. I'm their coach, Alexis, based in Florida. And I've not been to Kingston yet, but hopefully after the pandemic, I'll get out there to see everyone in person. But I guess I'll just say, because so much has already been said, I will say the team who I, 9 or 10 months ago did not know at all, has absolutely impressed me with probably 3 factors to do the kind of work they're doing and the ideas that they've come up with and the particular issue that they've tackled. truly has taken some humility by the team. I have got the privilege of seeing that really firsthand, and a ton of bravery, because some of the prototyping experiences that they've taken on, and I know Julie even talked about working with a translator throughout their prototype. They've taken prototyping, our last major phase of the work, to a whole nother level, and so they were a real model of taking on some extra challenges. It is one of the most coachable teams that I've ever worked with. So I am a very passionate coach, and I love what I do, but I am not easy. And this team really wanted to learn, and so I know it's been the first time that Kingston, I think, has worked with Bloomberg Philanthropies and in this kind of training capacity, and I really hope I keep plugging them to Bloomberg for more programs, because I really have been so impressed with how much they've grabbed onto this way of working, and how much they have asked for side conversations and help with other things they're doing to bring innovation in. And that, I just wanted to also shout out to the Mayor's Innovation Week, because that was also a real standout extra on top of the program that impressed me to no end. When I saw that this team facilitate during that session, honestly, it was world-class facilitation from a team that had never really done that before. So I was pleasantly surprised by everyone. So thank you for, allowing me in.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexis, for those comments. We really appreciate it. I can tell you from our end, we were incredibly excited by the chance to partner with Bloomberg, and so we would certainly welcome further work and collaboration on that. That sounds great. Amazing. Thanks, folks. So I think that takes us to the end of our agenda for today. So we will get to work on building our next meeting, which we'll schedule, I suppose, for the second week in August, where we'll look at building that session to do some of the visioning work and how we seize the moment, as Paul has said, and look forward to a really good discussion from the group. And so we'll let you know any details ahead of time, and look forward to seeing you then. So until then, again, happy reopening, everybody. Happy phase one, and look forward to seeing you out and about. And again, thanks for all of your time and efforts today. Thanks, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.